I've always loved driving at night. There's something peaceful about the empty roads, the hum of the engine, and the soft glow of headlights illuminating the asphalt. Felt like an escape from the world, a place where nothing could touch me. But tonight was different. It was a little after midnight, and I had just left my friend's place. We had spent the evening catching up over drinks and games. When I stepped outside, the cold night air sobered me up quickly. I was eager to get home, especially since I had a long drive ahead. My house was a good hour away, and the route took me through long stretches of isolated countryside. As I merged onto the highway, I cranked up the radio, hoping the music would keep me awake. I glanced at the rearview mirror, noting the absence of cars behind me. The road was unusually empty tonight. Normally, there would be at least a few other night owls sharing the highway, but I hadn't passed a single vehicle for miles. The moon hung low, casting an eerie silver light over the landscape. The trees lining the road appeared almost skeletal, their bare branches swaying in the wind. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, feeling an unsettling chill creep down my spine. It was just a drive, I reminded myself, nothing to worry about. Half an hour into the drive, I noticed something in the distance. At first, it was just a small, dark shape at the edge of my high beams. As I got closer, I realized it was a car, an old beat-up sedan, parked on the shoulder of the road. The hood was up, and the hazard lights blinked weakly, their orange glow cutting through the darkness. I slowed down as I passed, glancing at the car. There was someone standing next to it, a tall figure dressed in dark clothing. Couldn't see their face, but they seemed to be staring straight at me, even as I drove by. For a moment, I considered stopping to help, but something stopped me, a gut feeling that gnawed at my inside. There was something off about the whole situation. The way the figure stood so still, watching me, it didn't feel right. I sped up. Minutes passed, and the unsettling feeling didn't fade. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see the car following me, but the road behind me remained empty. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the unease. Maybe the person was just waiting for help. Maybe I was being paranoid. The longer I drove, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made the right choice by not stopping. About 10 minutes later, the car's fuel light blinked on. I cursed under my breath. I'd forgotten to fill up earlier, and now I was in the middle of nowhere with a dwindling gas tank. Up ahead, a small gas station came into view, flickering neon sign casting an anemic glow over the pumps. Relief washed over me. I pulled in and parked next to one of the pumps, turning off the engine. The station was deserted. The windows of the small shop were dark, and there was no attendant in sight. It looked like the place hadn't been used in years. The paint was peeling, and the lights buzzed faintly, threatening to give out at any moment. I got out of the car, rubbing my arms against the cold. The air was much chillier than it had been earlier. I grabbed the pump and started to fill up the tank, glancing around nervously. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, everything felt too still, too quiet. That's when I saw it, the same old sedan, creeping slowly down the road towards the gas station. Its headlights were dim, barely cutting through the night. My heart raced. It was the same car, the one I had passed earlier, and it was heading straight for me. I froze, pump still in my hand. The car pulled into the station and parked a few spots away from mine. The engine idled for a moment before shutting off. The door creaked open, and the same figure I had seen earlier stepped out. This time I could see them more clearly. They were tall, too tall. Their limbs long and unnaturally thin. Their face was obscured by a hood, but I could feel their eyes on me, watching me. I dropped the pump and jumped back into my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. Figure stood still, not moving, just staring. My heart was pounding in my ears as I finally got the engine started. I slammed my foot on the gas, peeling out of the station and back onto the road. The sedan followed. I floored the accelerator, my heart racing as I glanced in the rearview mirror. Car was right behind me, its headlights glaring in the darkness. No matter how fast I drove, it kept pace, never getting closer but never falling behind. Panic gripped me. My mind raced, searching for an escape, but there was nowhere to go, just miles and miles of empty road stretching out before me. Suddenly, the car's headlights flickered and then cut out completely. I stared in disbelief as the sedan vanished into the darkness, swallowed by the night. I slowed down, scanning the road behind me. There was nothing. No car, no figure, just the empty highway. Had it all been in my head? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. But as I turned my attention back to the road ahead, I saw it. Standing in the middle of the road, illuminated by my headlights, was the figure. I slammed on the brake, car screeching to a halt just inches from them. My hands shook as I stared at the hooded figure, their face still hidden in shadow. Then, slowly, they raised their head, and I saw it, face twisted and unnatural, eyes hollow and empty. grin stretched across its face, too wide, too grotesque to be human. My blood ran cold. Before I could react, the figure lunged at the car, slamming its hands against the windshield. I screamed, throwing the car into reverse and speeding backward down the road. The figure chased after me, its movements jerky and unnatural like a puppet on strings. I spun the car around, my tires screeching as I sped away, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't dare look back. I just kept driving and driving and driving. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, watching, waiting. I didn't stop driving until I reached the outskirts of town. My heart still thundered in my chest, and my hands were slick with sweat as they gripped the steering wheel. Familiar lights of civilization calmed me just enough. Pull into a small diner parking lot. The bright neon sign seemed like a beacon of safety. After what I had just been through, I parked the car, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, trying to collect myself. But as I looked up, I froze. The sedan was parked across the street. It was barely visible in the shadows, but I knew it was the same one. The hooded figure was standing next to it, motionless, just watching me. My pulse quickened again as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling. I needed to call someone. Anyone. But as I looked down at the screen, it was dead, completely drained, though I knew it had been fully charged just minutes ago. The lights from the diner flickered, and suddenly, the air felt colder. I could feel it. Something was here. It wasn't just following me anymore. It was closing in. I bolted from the car, my breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. The diner felt like my only hope, its warm glow a fragile barrier between me and whatever was out there. I pushed through the door, the bell overhead ringing out in the quiet night. Inside, the place was almost empty, except for a weary waitress behind the counter and an old man nursing a cup of coffee at a corner booth. I hurried to the counter, my voice shaky as I asked for a phone. The waitress looked at me, puzzled, but handed me an old landline phone from behind the register. I dialed 911 with trembling hands, my eyes darting to the windows. Outside, the street was empty. The sedan was gone, but I knew better than to think it had disappeared. I described the figure, car, terror that had been chasing me, but as I spoke, I could hear the operator's voice falter. She told me there had been no reports of any cars like that, no sightings of a strange figure on the highway. Her tone was skeptical, but she promised to send a patrol car just to check. I hung up, a hollow feeling settling in my chest. I felt trapped in my own fear, and no one else seemed to understand how real it was. The old man in the corner stirred, his tired eyes locking with mine. He stood slowly and shuffled over, his voice gravelly and quiet. "I saw it too," he muttered. "Years ago, on this same road. It never goes away. You can outrun it for a while, but it always finds you. And once it does, it doesn't stop until it has you." Chill ran down my spine as his words sunk in. He placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You can't run forever." My stomach twisted into a knot, and I glanced back outside. The shadows seemed to thicken around the diner, and I knew, deep down, that whatever was chasing me wasn't done yet.